That's right. What's going on? All you Bruce Lee movie-loving maniacs out there. That's right. We are here to represent the shirt, y'all. Represent the shirt.
Hold on. Shirt.
There you go. Shirt. Oh, shit. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. Funko Pop It. That's right. What up? That's how we do it. Representing our love for the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce Lee. Oh, look at that. He's still got his pops in the boxes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
This is the way.
That is the way.
What is going on? All you badasses out there. That's right. Welcome back to another episode of Versus the 20th.
Uh-oh.
I'm still moving.
I'm still moving.
I'm moving.
Technical difficulties.
The host is moving. That's trouble.
The one
Third
person that we
episode?
expect to
That's
have
right,
to
we-
leave technical difficulty.
Are we back?
Yes.
Yay! All right. Woo! All right.
And here's
Rick got. What do you have there?
Got Pop 1.
Ooh. That thing is huge.
I got Pop 2. This is the one with the blood on it, so that was a special one. That
Okay. All right.
And then, of
All
course, I got the gold.
Ooh, the gold. Yeah, there you go. All right. So we had a little lag there, but fuck it. We're going to keep rocking and rolling. Versus episode, the 23rd episode in the series, and the Kung Fu Avengers are back. They have returned. That's right. That's right, the Kung Fu Genius himself.
Yay!
There you go. Look at those guns. I'm jealous. Kung Fu Genius himself, Alex Richter in the house. We have filmmaker, martial artist, badass Kyle Wong. That's right. Keep an eye out for Night Watch. We have Eric, the Asian movie enthusiast, in the house. That's right.
Yay!
Frank Jang, the master of remaster. That's right. Buy 88 Films, Eureka Products, Well Go USA, 3 companies that are badass, and Kung Fu Santa himself. That's right. Rick
The number
Myers.
one host of the Kung Fu Extravaganza in 2 weeks.
2
Right?
weeks.
Right? Not right
Two.
now. 2 weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks. That's right. 2 weeks. Nice, Frank. Nice. Very nice. That's why we're friends. Instantly got that.
All the references.
Oh, that was brilliant. But yes, Kung Fu Extravaganza, July 22nd, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Be there or be square. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be epic. We may have an extra guest today. FJ DeSanto, the showrunner of the Transformers War for Cybertron series on Netflix. He may pop in, he may not, but we're going to keep going. We're going to get it crack-a-lackin'. 2 Bruce Lee classics. Way of the Dragon versus Enter the Dragon. We're going to go ahead and get into it, but first let's say what's up to the Movie Dojo Army. Hanging out, coming in to watch us rant and ramble. We got the Collector number 1 is here. Jason Willard, Evelina, Lady Danish, Brad Movies, Marco G, Omegon 32, Heather Love, Jake Hall. That's right. All the badasses are showing up. Give the shout outs to the Movie Dojo Army watching. All right. 1972. Let's go ahead and get into it. The Way of the Dragon. Written, directed, everything. He did everything in this movie. Super filmmaker Bruce Lee himself has done it all in this film. But you know what? Who cares about the iconic climatic fight at the end, and you know everybody talks about all this cool stuff. That's not why you're here. When I know you guys want us to talk about the important stuff that happens in Way of the Dragon, right? Bruce Lee scaring children, right? Bruce Lee scaring children. Bruce Lee, having an awkward moment with a Karen. Right? That's important. Bruce Lee having bowel issues and constantly having to find a bathroom. Right? That's why you're here. Bruce Lee going to a bank. And will he deposit $20 or not? I don't know. This is important stuff that you guys came to hear for us to talk about, right? I'm just shitting with you. But yeah, Way of the Dragon. Believe it or not, Enter the Dragon was really my introduction to Bruce Lee. Watched it on TV, and we'll get to that when we get to Into the Dragon. And then after that, I had to go hunt his other movies. Old Fox, Dusty Dust. Fox released Pan and Scan VHS box set. That's all I could find back in the day. And but before that, I used to watch it on television a lot. And it was epic. It was amazing. Just badass. The climactic finale with him and Chuck Norris is still one of the best fight scenes till this day, you know. Even though a lot of younglings today would say it's slow, it's lame, they're bored, blah, blah, blah. Completely missing the point of why that fight is special, okay? And I'm going to let you guys talk about why that fight is special. But Way of the Dragon's great. You know, Bruce Lee, doing his, flexing his comedic chops. You know, he was a fan of Jerry Lewis. And, some of the comedy kind of works, and some of it, I'm just like, what's going on? But I get it. He's playing a character. He loves Zatoichi movies. And I was like, yeah, Bruce Lee loves Zatoichi films. I love it. I can dig it. And, he wanted to play a similar character, a little country bumpkin coming into the next city or town and being socially awkward and then kind of falling into rescuing and fighting for those that are weak and then walking off into the sunset. So I totally get the character he was going for in this one. This is a classic. Fights are great at the end. I love how Bruce evolves in the fight. He tries to go in there all cocky and traditional martial arts against Colt, played by Chuck Norris' son, and it doesn't work out too well. And then I'll let you guys explain in more in detail for you guys. But it doesn't work out for him, and then he has to adapt. But just a great movie. A classic, a true classic. I even like this. I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack's really good as well. When I saw Shaolin Soccer, that almost has the exact same theme song. Listen to Shaolin Soccer's theme song in the opening credits. It's almost the exact same theme song as Way of the Dragon. But
there's a reason for that.
Oh, it was a kind of homage.
Homage.
He
Okay,
did that
cool.
all the time. He takes an entire scene from Way of the Dragon and puts it into Kung Fu Hustle.
Right. This one, right?
Yes.
This.
The miner.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. But yeah, don't really have too many negatives. Just the socially awkward country bumpkin comedic stuff kind of went on. I think maybe a little bit too long in the beginning. But I'm being nitpicky though. I mean, that's really in terms of negatives. It was cool seeing Muhammad Ali in the film, starring as the assassin that was trying to kill Bruce. I'm just kidding. Come on, didn't anybody think it was Muhammad Ali? Come on, that guy looked like discount diet Muhammad Ali. Come on,
Hey, Muhammad Ali light.
There you go. Oh, but yeah, I can't as of right now can't think of too many negatives. A lot of tonal shifts though. Again, starts off as a comedy and then it goes straight to violent revenge movie. But yeah, it's a classic. I love it, and we're gonna pass it on to Frank.
Yeah, I mean, lots of things I like about this movie. Like you said, I like the comedy. I thought it was a refreshing change for a Bruce Lee film, especially in the beginning. Like you said, the fish out of water thing. I like how the film didn't feel like it's a Hong Kong film, or the way it's shot, the way the scenes, the way it played out, didn't feel like the traditional Hong Kong film. I feel like, especially, I mean, obviously it was set in Rome and all that stuff, but it felt like you're watching a European or American production. It's just the way it was presented that makes it kind of refreshing. I love Nora Mel. I think she was fabulous in this film. In fact, Nora Mel is one of the people we were trying to interview for my martial arts documentary.
Oh,
And
nice.
She's one of the two holdouts for the documentary. She said, "I'm not doing this until COVID is over." So yeah.
Okay.
So we're waiting for COVID to be over. We have to do them in person. Can't be virtual. That was one of the rules we set for the documentary, that all the interview has to be done in person. So
Right.
I like how I like how the like you said, the Chuck Norris and the Bruce Lee fight. I like how the fight evolved. Like you said, how initially he was trying to did it his own way, didn't work, so he started to adapt. He began to watch how Chuck Norris move, how Colt move, and then he kind of respond to his moves. I like that. I mean, there are things that didn't age too well. Obviously, the kind of the homosexual character that didn't age too well. It played a little bit too much for stereotyping. Played too much for laugh. Also, I wish the Coliseum fight would have been fought outdoor though. It felt a little bit studio bound for me, especially when you saw the backdrop there.
Right.
Like that doesn't look like the actual Coliseum. That looked more like a painting. And it's actually a painting. Yeah, right there. Yeah, you can tell that's a painting. I wish it could have been done totally outdoor. Just fight inside that, right at the center of Coliseum. I think that would have made it even more impressive. But yeah, nice. I thought it was a nice change of pace for Bruce Lee films. With the comedy and I like how you expect the romance to blossom between him and Nora Mel's character. It didn't. It was more like just a kind of platonic friendship, even though obviously she has feelings for him. The restaurant characters I like. I thought they were good. The final twist with the uncle being the bad guy, I thought that was nice too. So other than that, yeah, I think this is a solid film, and really not too much. No, not too much complaints. I think this is a great Bruce Lee. One of the great Bruce Lee films. Of all the, probably one of the most distinctive entry in his works.
Copy that. The actor that betrayed the was stabbing all his employees at the end. Wasn't he the exact same actor that poisoned Shenzen's master in Fist of Fury? He's the same actor, right?
Yeah.
Was he typecast to be bad guys? But it was kind of funny. Rick, I have one question before we move on.
Yes, sir.
Another thing that was important about the fight was the show of respect, and I'll have you guys go into more detail with Bruce and Chuck at the end. Did that happen at all? You got 5 billion martial arts films around that time. Did any of them have anything as just impactful as the showing of respect to your opponent? Was there anything similar to that around that time?
Yeah, I mean, La Leong does that a lot. We're going to be talking about La Leong next week.
Okay.
I see. I'm sorry. I should have asked for permission on that one, but we'd already discussed it. There's no way we can do an episode before the Kung Fu Extravaganza and not have an episode with La Leong's movie.
Yeah.
The greatest Kung Fu filmmaker of all time. Yeah. Am I going next? Because I'll get into this.
Go next. Go next then.
Okay.
Go next.
Here's the situation. The reason that this movie is so distinctive is that this is the only movie in Bruce's filmography which is 100% him. The studio might have had some influence. And also, I think the reason they didn't do that fight outside, Frank, is that the cat would not allow it. The cat did not want to be outside. The Coliseum people didn't want the cat crapping up the place. Sorry, you have to go into a studio. But in any case, Bruce thought everything out. He got out of Hong Kong on purpose because he didn't want the influence of the studio. The studio might have insisted on certain things. They might have even, who knows, they might have even insisted on the stereotypical characters because Bruce wanted to break the mold on this one. And I wanted to say to all those people who may have said, oh, it's slow and it's not as good.
What was the deal with the cat? That's another complaint.
Well, no, the cat is great, but the powerful cat.
Yeah.
If you have not seen this film in its original form, in its original language, you haven't seen the film. Basically, Bruce created this film on the mistakes of other films of the same time. He takes the whole language situation. If you saw the American dub of this, one of the hard ones, because the whole idea is the reason everybody starts fighting each other is they literally do not understand what they're saying. The Chinese don't understand the Italians. The Italians don't understand the Chinese. That's what that whole mime scene was about. But when you see the American cut of it, it makes no sense because they're both speaking English. Bruce also took care of guns in this one. He was so tired of being in Kung Fu movies. I mean, he didn't solve it as cleverly as Enter the Dragon did. But then again, I can't remember. Frank and Alex, do you remember? Did he film this? Did he film this before he did Enter the Dragon? Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So Enter the Dragon, and because he created the opening sequence in Enter the Dragon, he might have said, "Okay, I've got a much better idea for dealing with guns in this movie." And this movie had darts, and at least he addressed it. And also, he wanted to create a character who was human and not a superhero, a supra-hero. And also, he loved using ignorance. In terms of the nunchaka use in this is awesome because he lets the other guy have it. And the other guy does what almost everyone does with nunchakus, which they hit themselves.
Yeah.
It also shows the reason that he used the nunchakas in these films, because the nunchaka is one of the least controllable, therefore one of the least practical and effective kung fu weapons. That's why he used it. If he really wanted to use a great weapon, he would have used a spear or the bent spear or a bow or a long sword. We were talking earlier off this thing about the great knife fight scenes in kung fu history. And I'm just waiting for, a guy to do a knife fight. And Donnie Yen kind of does that in Killzone and SPL, in that Wu Jing has a short knife. So Donnie Yen gets a long baton.
Yeah.
But if you pull up a spear when somebody has a knife, guess who wins? But again, so he tried to make it believable, and he also tried to make the best kind of kung fu fight, which is when it develops, it changes, and he learns in order to win. It's not about taking the most abuse or the most punches in the face. It's about learning and getting better. What else did I want to say? He did everything in this on purpose. Took care of guns. Oh yeah, and he also really wanted to get across the stranger in a strange land aspect to it. That's why he just threw every single little tourist cliche. And apparently, according to, I believe Shannon's husband told me at the first Bruce Lee memorial dinner, that Bruce based that on experiences he had before he was a star, going to foreign countries. He had become the Chinese Superman in the interim. So that's why I think some people didn't accept him just being a bumpkin. But he wanted to remind people, yeah, that's what he was before he came back. He was a failed American actor before he came back to Hong Kong. So it's, to my mind, again, I treasure this movie because it is the purest expression of Bruce's art that we have. It's the sole movie that was at least 99.9% Bruce. Carry on.
Can I add something real quick?
Of course.
Because you mentioned the darts. I think one of the reasons he used darts in this film was, at that time, there was a very popular TV series based on the martial art novels, and the lead character, his kung fu, his weapon was darts, flying dagger. And
Right.
It's called 小李飛刀,
Lei Fei Dou, yeah, I was gonna say.
小李飛刀, lead flying dagger. So that was a very popular TV series at that time. So the tune he was whistling in the film before he started throwing the darts, that's the theme song from the TV series sung by Roman Law.
That's cool.
So again, like
How
you
cool
said,
is that?
unless you listen to the Cantonese version or the Mandarin version, you wouldn't have gotten that reference. But that's
This
how
is why Frank and Alex are so effing important. Yay. They're both going to be on the Kung Fu Extravaganza.
That's it, Alex. You've already been chosen. You can't get out
No
of
choice now.
Alex, are you going to go into a little bit more detail about the cat?
Yes.
I was young and I watched it and I still got what the cat was all about. I got it. The metaphor. But there's people in chat asking, like, they want to know what was the deal with the cat. So when we get to you, if you
And
want to go
remember,
into detail.
and Jackie Chan's second big movie, he does cat style.
That's right. Snake in the Eagle Shadow, yeah. All right, Eric.
Yes. It's kind of refreshing rewatching these movies because it's been a little while since I've seen them. First time watching them on Blu-ray, which is nice. And obviously having these discussions with you gentlemen always allows me to learn more about this stuff. But I think, when I was younger, I was one of those guys. I'm just like, come on, man, when's Bruce going to kick someone in the face? Just like, let's go. Especially that scene where they're in the back behind the restaurant. He's like tuning up. He's ready to show him the practice. And then the guy comes out of the back. He's like, come on, guys. Come on, we got customers here. Oh. But nowadays, I do appreciate a lot of the stuff in the setup. I mean, I really like the fish out of water stuff in a lot of movies. I just saw one just the other day, a new Kiyoshi Kurosawa film called To the Ends of the Earth that has like the same kind of thing, except it's more serious and there's more anxiety in that film. But I even knowing who Bruce Lee was, going into this film again, rewatching it, it kind of disarms you a little bit. It humanizes the guy and it makes him kind of a likable character. And it's almost like the opening hour of Audition. It's like, hey, it's going to be a nice romantic comedy. You're like, no. So, you get that somebody who doesn't, who never saw the movie be like, what is this, like a Bruce Lee comedy? And then he ups that intensity. And I think it does a nice job in making that transition. I think it gives a nice example. We talk about fish out of water stuff. It's a nice example about how you could communicate with people, not having to use language, just using mannerisms. Like the part where he goes, this one, I like this, where he's like, yeah, the bad guy, and it doesn't have the shot of the bad guy, but when he understands, and you see the look on his face after this, and it's a look of terror. And I love that scene.
I'm going to do my impersonation of him.
Kung Fu.
And then there's a scene near the end too with Chuck. Where Chuck is hobbling and he still wants to fight, and Bruce is just like, just don't do it, man. Like, I'm giving you a way out. Just don't do it. And I like those scenes in this. It's really nice. You get some added bonuses. The lead actress is quite fetching, I thought. I noticed that even more this time on Blu-ray. And then
that's more male.
And then I gotta say, Bruce makes his movies, but if Chuck Norris wasn't in this, it would be less memorable. That final fight, man, is just legit. Yep. So, I mean, I actually enjoyed this more on the recent viewing that I had previously. So, yeah, this is a pretty solid flick.
Oh yeah, and plus, you can't beat, this scene. Ripping the hair off and blowing it. That was great. Little nice little touches.
That's why Bruce cast him. He personally cast him. I bet when they were doing their tournaments in California, took one look at at Chuck's chest and went, "You're in the movie."
You have the hair, Alex.
So I love Way of the Dragon because very similar to what Rick said, this film for me seems like the only one that it's really a Bruce Lee film. His first two contract films for Golden Harvest, both Big Boss and Fist of Fury, were studio productions, and they felt that way. They were, Big Boss was very low budget, very thin story, and Bruce, I mean, can you imagine that James Tien was supposed to be the original star of Big Boss? Can you even imagine Big Boss with James Tien? No one would ever talk about that film. So he made a lousy film something because he was Bruce Lee, and then Fist of Fury was definitely a step up in terms of the film and everything, but it was still a studio film. He's still kind of under Lo Wei's thumb. Finally, after his 2-picture deal is done, he creates Concord Productions, and now he can do things kind of on his own terms. He's got kind of a 50-50 split with Raymond. He's more on the creative side, and he now wants to have comedy and all these other elements and, have the European locations and everything. So it feels like this is him now finally being able to do his own thing. And he didn't get to do Silent Flute, which is his big swan song to Jeet Kune Do, but he put some of the Jeet Kune Do philosophy in here with the adaptation at the end, with the fight with Chuck. Like you said, when it wasn't going his way, he had to adapt. He took beats out of a couple of Muhammad Ali's fights for that scene. with the footwork, and and also the point I was going to say, and Rick said it, which I have to reiterate. If you've not seen this movie in Chinese in the original language, it literally makes no sense. Like the comedy, some of it is a little dated even for Chinese standards, but sometimes I have people come up to me and like, oh, wait, the dragons, and if they say Return of the Dragon, then you know the version they saw already, right?
Oh.
and not Return of the Dragon, all right? And when they say it was terrible, it wasn't funny, didn't make any sense, they say, did you watch the English dub? And most of the time they say yes. Okay, so you didn't really see the film, because a big part of it is the fact that there are miscommunications between everyone. When you see it in English and he goes, hey, tell him. It's like, when I saw that as a kid, I'm like, why don't you just tell him you're right there, right? And then when I finally, in my teen years, saw it in Chinese, I was like, oh, yeah, duh, of course. But Rick brought up a great point, because I didn't think about it like countering the mistakes of other films, because even to this day, especially mainland Chinese films, dub everyone into Chinese, regardless if they're Westerner or whatever. So this dynamic is never really played. You see it more in Hong Kong films, especially more modern Hong Kong films. But he was really the first person to be like, if the Chinese people speak Chinese, the other people don't. And that's a story beat right there by itself. And the fact that he put that in there is really, shows that this was really the only film he kind of finished as a director. And I think it was pretty promising in terms of the fact that he was already starting to do a lot of things that other people weren't even thinking about. But, Samurai, to answer your question about the cat, okay, because people ask about the cat.
Yeah, I know, but they're asking. Chat's asking. So
Mito Yuhara, who was the kind of the main guy running Black Belt magazine, he actually talked about this in the late '80s, and he said that Bruce originally wanted that cat to be like to show like how a cat kind of plays with its prey, and to kind of make it seem like he's kind of playing around with Chuck or whatever. But even Bruce admitted that the final product didn't actually come out the way that he initially intended it. And so that is essentially the reason why the cat is there. So, and little side piece of trivia, when Bruce originally wrote this film, he intended to call it Enter the Dragon, and later decided to save that title for his for another project, and then called it Way of the Dragon, which is, by the way, not the translation of the Chinese title, which is Mang Nong Guo Gong, which is the fierce dragon crosses the sea, which is a very cool title. It's just not as smooth in English, but I like the Chinese title. And also the Chinese usually refer to anyone who leaves China and goes to a foreign country as a fierce dragon, because they dare leave China to begin with. Right. So they also say if he wasn't a fierce dragon, he would not cross the sea. So a very perfect title. So I love Way of the Dragon. It feels like a real Bruce Lee film for me, and that's all I got to say about that.
And the real title is literally illustrated in the credits.
Yes.
Yeah, with the dragon boat. Yeah.
The boat going across, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Smart. Bruce, can you imagine what would have happened had he lived? Oh my God.
Absolutely.
I know.
No need for any of us.
Nope. One more little tiny nitpick came to my head. Little tiny. It's tiny.
What?
Okay. All right. This movie, despite the mini bosses and the main boss, has the most least threatening thugs ever. Least threatening looking thugs ever. But it's still fun. Doesn't ruin the movie. But
remind me of those guys from China O'Brien a little bit.
I mean, Samurai, now that you mention it, I do feel that the opponent, his opponent in the first half of the film wasn't as worthy as the Japanese guy.
Yeah.
The other American and
the mini bosses and then Colt, the main
right.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. He's building up, and if Bruce hadn't been there, those villains would have been perfectly fine for the rest of the staff, but not for Bruce. And Bruce uses them as a lesson in how to fight.
Copy that. All right.
Then the other guys come in.
Copy that. Kyle.
Basically, I did see this like let's see, I saw these films in '91, so almost 20 years when they came out, and I grew up watching the dubbed versions. And now that I went over the years, don't shake your head at me, Rick. I actually got the DVDs that actually had the Cantonese and Mandarin dubs, and then the Blu-rays. And again, when you're a young kid in Canada and you barely had anything from Hong Kong or China brought over, and your grandmother had like a lot of these things, it was like hard to find like any Asian actor to actually look up to. But Bruce Lee was the immediate one that I looked up to, especially after watching The Big Boss and Fist of Fury. But when Way of the Dragon came out, I connected with it so much more, because now that like I grew up more, and him having the creative control of directing and acting in it and expressing himself properly in this film, and whatever Game of Death would have been at the time, but that'll be another discussion whenever we get to that one. But just seeing how Bruce Lee made his superhero persona human in this film, like just being a normal human being of just, I'm brought over to help out a friend, and then seeing him interact with everyone, and just even the subtle hints of like not understanding language now, back when the dub, as Alex, Rick, and Frank have pointed out, it's just, yeah, the dub, and everyone's just speaking English. I'm like, this is weird. Why am I not getting? Then finding out later on, like, there we go. Yeah, no one understands any language. Is not a thing anymore. But seeing how that played in a factor, and then even seeing how a friend and I, we actually discussed the fights, alley fights with the henchmen at the start and the staff. And my friend pointed out, those guys aren't stunt dudes. They were just the tough guys to show up, and there's like, yeah, just beat up the staff and then let Bruce show off what he could do. And I was like, that's a good way of putting it. And then leading up to Kiwon Shik and Robert Wall, like two great karate masters in their own right too, and just beating down the original staff members, and then both of them just going, "Is your name Tom Long? Is your name Tom Long?" and then Bruce Lee just like, "Yep, all right, let's do this," and then fights them both. And I just remember, I'll still have that scene in my mind where Bruce Lee just trips Robert Wall and punches him in the dick. Like, punches him in the dick. I'm like, Bruce Lee could get away with that, everybody. Bruce Lee could get away with that. You cannot fight Bruce Lee back.
His balls exploded on impact.
Straight up punched him and took him out.
That's in the director's cut, did we?
Exactly.
And the script, Alex.
And then even the humor too, like when Norm Yao's character was talking with Bruce Lee right at the fountain, and then the Italian model beauty comes along, and they're just having this moment. I just remember in the dub version, they just cut it out all the way of just, yep, Norm Yao leaves, but in the original version, Norm Yao leaves, and then it goes with the woman to her apartment, and I'm just going, I wonder what's going to happen here. And when I finally saw it, he's just practicing in front of the mirror, and then finally just, you see her coming out the room, topless, he's like,
yeah.
and then leaves. I just immediately
He runs out of there.
Laughing. And I just knew that, like, I want to see more of what Bruce Lee had, like, if he acted more beyond, like, Way of the Dragon and acting as himself. And of course, we have, like, the iconic fight between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, which is, again, like, nothing can emulate that as a show of respect between the two, especially when they just have that moment to warm up, just getting everything loose. And then I was like, because in a real fight, no one's gonna let you warm up at all. This was go at it, be done. But here, this was a mutual respect between.
I see the cat there. Look at the cat at the bottom.
The cat's
even the cat's warming up. The cat's warming up, exactly. But other than that, yeah, the only
right there.
Exactly.
This is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a beautiful scene, and even at a young age when I watched it, I was like, that shows a lot of respect as a martial artist. And again, Bruce Lee is still an influence to a lot of people, and still to me, and continues. And no one can emulate this film as much as they try, which we'll talk about soon. But that's
All right.
That's my thoughts on it.
Copy that. Very, very well said. A year later, 1973, Enter the Dragon. Directed by Robert Klaus, starring John Saxon, Bolo Young. Gotta love some Bolo. Jim Kelly's son, Jim Kelly, the legend, is here. And this was my introduction to Bruce Lee, watching this on television with my dad. And I didn't know anything about James Bond at the time. I didn't know I was watching a James Bond ripoff. I didn't know I was watching that. You know, with the cheesy James Bond villain with Mr. Bigglesworth, the cat, you know. Like, I didn't know that's what I was watching. I was just like, wow, it's some kind of spy film. I'm seeing a real-life superhero on screen with Bruce Lee. Oh, my God. I instantly became a huge Bruce Lee fan. And me and my dad used to watch Enter the Dragon all the time. Gotta love the soundtrack. The soundtrack's still iconic till this day. A lot of people... this is an interesting versus, because there's people out there that say, well, Robert Klaus just got lucky because all his other movies suck. There's that, right? And then there's other people who say that this is the most overrated kung fu movie of all time, to the point where when this movie came out, it wasn't even #1 in Hong Kong. A Shaw Brothers film was above this movie. Very interesting. This is interesting facts.
Yeah. No, Hong Kong people didn't like it.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to hear in detail why, Frank, once we get to you. Okay. But yeah, there's people out there. They're just like, I'd hate to be the bad guy here, but Enter the Dragon is the most overrated kung fu movie of all time. Bruce Lee doesn't struggle with anyone. He's picture perfect till the end. The end fight with him and was it Shek Kin? Did I say it right, Alex? Help me out.
Sekin, yeah.
Sekin.
Wasn't really
Uncle Gin, right?
Uncle Gin.
Wasn't really a top nemesis for Bruce. Everyone was disappointed in the John Saxon Bolo Young fight. He just kicked Bolo in the nuts, and that was the end of it. And then now I've been hearing, maybe Rick, maybe you can help me out with this, but I've been hearing rumors going around, actually kind of recent, for the past couple of months, that, I like John Saxon, right? But the thing is like, I'm hearing rumors. I don't know if this is confirmed, but he was just like, you know what? No. Jim Kelly needs to die, not me. So I don't know if this is true or not. And now my mind is completely blown. Like, I don't know. This is what I've been hearing. My mind is completely blown because imagine the end finale with Bruce Lee and Jim Kelly beating everybody up. Imagine how much cooler that would have looked, right? But like I said, I don't know if that's confirmed. I'm just here to talk about it, right? But there's a lot of people that are just like, you know what? We love Bruce. We know why everyone loves this movie. It's iconic. It made Bruce Lee a superstar, you know, even though he wasn't around to enjoy his work. And I get it. It made him an icon. I get it. And this movie with Bruce has inspired billions of people. Like, this is fact, right? But is it a good movie? Is it better than Way of the Dragon? That's why we're here to talk about it. I have a lot of love for the film, though, because it was my first introduction. You know, I watched it with my dad, watched it all the time. And it's great. Rewatching it now, in terms of pure entertainment, rewatching it now, though, it does get slow in the middle. It gets kind of slow. It's almost like when Bruce Lee is not on screen, I'm kind of like fate. If I'm not watching Bruce Lee on screen or Jim Kelly on screen, I'm kind of just checking out of the movie a little bit with the other characters. I don't know if you guys felt that way. But you know what? It's a classic. I enjoy it in terms of pure martial arts entertainment. I think it's great. I think it's very iconic. And come on. He had that little quick scene with Jackie Chan in the movie. Here, I'll play it right here.
I might have been seeing something.
Here we go. Right there. Jackie Chan, y'all.
Yeah.
Movie Dojo Army, if you weren't aware, that's...
Come on, show the breaking the neck scene.
Yeah, I don't have that one. Sorry, I tried to find it. But yeah, if you guys didn't know, Movie Dojo Army, that was Jackie Chan.
Yep.
But yeah, just there's some badass moments in here, though. I enjoy it, I got the Funko Pop as proof. There you go, with the blood cuts on it and everything.
Out of the box.
I'm sorry. What kind of collector am I?
Samurai likes to play with his toys.
I like to play.
You've offended me, and you've offended the Shaolin Temple.
It's perfect segue, Frank, because watching this movie, before the extended version came out, growing up, I always was confused with that line. You have offended my family, and you have offended the Shaolin Temple. I was like, huh? I was like, where did that come from? And then with the extended version, when we finally get the scene that wasn't cut,
right,
with him talking to his master.
Watch out.
Yeah, it was like, oh, it all makes sense now why he said that at the end of the movie. But let me guess, the Hollywood cut that because it was probably like, oh, this is too boring, or oh, the American audience is not going to understand all this philosophy, kung fu stuff, which is shame.
Yeah,
it's a shame. Yeah, this scene right here.
Yep.
Yeah, this made that in line all make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, classic movie. I still enjoy it. Will I vote for it? We'll find out. But we'll go ahead and segue to Frank.
So again, going back to the martial art documentary I'm working on, we actually went to several locations for several of the Enter the Dragon locations to shoot like how they are now. So, like the opening sequence, the opening shot with that temple door, right? That entrance, and then where they were doing the fights. Those are two completely different locations. So we had to first go to that place with the temple. Then we have to go all the way up to like some mountains to where that scene was shot with all the fighting with the Samo fight and all that. Then there's another location where he was talking with Dong Wai, the kid, the teapot, the water. That's also a separate location. That location is now kind of like a tourist, attraction. Like the government will put little signs that this is where Bruce Lee was. Yeah, so like that's a separate location from the temple entrance, and then the scene with him talking to Dong Wai, that's another location, and then the location with him and Roy Chow, that's near where he was talking to Dong Wai. So anyway, and then we went to the cemetery where he went to visit his mother or the parents or the sister. That's on the Hong Kong side. And I remember there were like mosquitoes everywhere when we climbed up to the cemetery. It's near Palma Day. It's up in the hill somewhere, and we had to go through these steps and all the grass. So anyway, we got mosquito bites all over. But that was fun. We tried to go to all these different locations where they shot, Enter the Dragon, to kind of show people how where they are and how they're not. But anyway, yeah, like Samurai said, this is an iconic film. Without this film, there wouldn't have been all these. This is like sort of like the kung fu film that started it all. That led to all these Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Donnie Yen, and have you. The scores are iconic. A lot of different scores iconic. Obviously, there were flaws. Yes, like the middle part was slow. Once he got to the island, that whole middle part was kind of slow. The reason why Hong Kong audiences didn't like it was they felt it was offensive in how the like Chinese were portrayed, especially in that banquet scene. It's like, why are there sumo wrestler in there? You know what I mean? Like this is this guy, Mr. Han, is Chinese. This island is supposedly near China, what have you. So why do you have like these sumo guys doing the wrestling? And they felt it was it almost like reinforcing the stereotyping of how like Westerners perceive Chinese, like that extra Orientalism. So they felt this is not made for us. It's like sweet and sour pork. If you go to Hong Kong, nobody eats sweet and sour pork in Hong Kong. it's sort of like that. So they felt kind of offended by it, and they felt that this was made not the targeted audience weren't us. It's the Westerners, and so that's why this film didn't do too well in Hong Kong. But yeah, again, like I said, this is an iconic film, and also one other thing, they didn't like the fact that almost everybody on the island dressed like karate folks, with the karate ropes, right?
Right.
The Hong Kongers say, well, if you practice kung fu, you wouldn't dress like that. You dress like how Bruce Lee dresses. And why do they all dress like they're in the karate section? So again, they felt that they weren't doing the research, so to speak. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, this is a classic film. I mean, that's how most people were introduced to Bruce Lee. So it definitely has its standing and status in the history of martial arts films. Yeah, so I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's
Were there any? Did you have any negatives? Any
negative.
negatives and
Well, yeah,
nitpicks?
like I pointed out, the middle part is kind of slow. Again, Sekin, the fight with Sekin, he tried to move like a martial artist. Sekin was really not that well trained in martial arts, but you can see that he tried hard with the kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
So again, I agree. Had it been a more worthy opponent, I think that final fight would have been classic, or even like you said, with Jim Kelly and Bruce Lee joining him, that would have been even better. And also, I'm always surprised at how short this scene was. This scene lasted no more than 10 minutes. It was 9 minutes long from the moment they went inside to the end with Mr. Han getting stuck by the spear. That whole scene was just 9 minutes long, so it's incredibly brief. I sometimes wish that it could have gone a bit longer. And again, I wish that it could have been a better fight, especially the scene before with them all fighting in the courtyard. There should have been more fights within that courtyard. But still, yeah, iconic film, no question about it.
Copy that.
Well,
and
Yeah, go.
I wouldn't be surprised if even The Dark Knight Rises kind of borrowed the end finale fight, because that when I was watching Dark Knight Rises in theater, I was like, dude, this is Into the Dragon. Everyone's brawling out in the middle, and you got the two iconic figures standing there, and like Batman standing there like Bruce Lee while everything's going crazy in the background. I was like, this is Into the Dragon. It kind of made me laugh.
The Rock ripped it off in Skyscraper too. They have a whole Hall of Mirrors fight scene at the end.
John Wick 2.
John Wick 2, yeah.
John Wick 2.
John Wick as well. Yeah,
Wow.
very iconic.
Okay, I didn't know that with Skyscraper. I haven't seen that one.
Well, here's
I saw it and I completely forgot about it.
But yeah, The Rock used Skyscraper to pay homage to the movies he loved when he was growing up.
That's sad.
So it's not really. Skyscraper's a lot of fun. He also, he does, Die Hard and a bunch of other things. So yeah, it's cool. I like Skyscraper.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so I won't make fun of it. All right, Rick, you can go next. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Oh, yes, I will. I got to talk to a lot of people on this. I had an extended interview several times with the producer, Fred Weintraub, and I was very impressed with Fred because unlike most, I've interviewed a lot of film producers with my years with Starlog and Famous Monsters and Fangoria and other movie magazines, and virtually all of them lie. They tell the official studio story. Fred Weintraub told me the truth about everything. Every question I had about the making of this movie, he said, yeah, this is what happened. He saw Kung Fu movies. He wanted to do a Kung Fu movie. He stumbled into Bruce. The reason that Robert Klaus got the job is that just prior to this movie, Robert Klaus had not done anything extraordinary. But the job immediately before Enter the Dragon was a movie called Darker Than Amber, which was based on a Travis McGee novel, which was a best-selling series of novels by the great crime and thriller writer John D. MacDonald, with one of the most famous guys in that genre, Travis McGee. And all the titles had a color in them: Darker Than Amber, the Big Green Goodbye, things like that. So he made this movie with Rod Taylor as Travis McGee, which is a terrible choice because Travis McGee is basically a Florida blonde guy, muscular guy. But Rod Taylor, who's muscular, got it. And I've been trying for years to find out who did the action choreography in Darker Than Amber. Because Darker Than Amber is a classic of screen fight scenes. There are 3 fight scenes in that movie that are exceptional, that have never been repeated. For their time, they're as bloody as the Wild Bunch, but it's fist fighting. It is not gunfighting. And it's bloody and it's vicious. There's a scene that I still can't find uncut where Travis is being forced to dig his own grave in a swamp graveyard. And they have a fast fight, and Travis McGee winds up using the shovel as a spear. and kills his opponent that way. And it is so fast, and it is so well done, and it's so vicious. The final fight, he fights William Smith, who Clint Eastwood fights at the end of Every Which Way But Loose, all over town. If I'm thinking of the right movie, it might have been the sequel. But William Smith is a big hulking guy who, in fact, William Smith is the guy that CBS wanted to star in the Kung Fu TV show. They wanted William Smith to star as the monk, and the producers are going, no, he's a huge hulking Western actor. So David Carradine was a compromise. It's something that I talk about in Films of Fury. So in any case, Robert Klaus got the job because of the action in Darker Than Amber, which I don't believe Robert Klaus was responsible for. But he took credit for it. So he got the job. And again, without Bruce Lee in this movie, it would be seen as the way that most people see it, which is, you come right out of a comic book. It is a clear, chop socky, fortune cookie. It's supposed to be a baseball movie, and they're putting football players in it. In other words, complete lack of understanding of not understanding the Chinese is different than Japanese. It's ignorance. It's limited knowledge. But it had Bruce, and at least Fred and Robert Klaus knew what they had in Bruce. Fred specifically. So Fred instructs Robert Klaus, let him do what he wants. He directed all his own fight scenes. He directed the opening sequence, because when the movie wasn't working, at the very end, they hadn't filmed the opening sequence that now appears in it until Bruce came back to Fred Weintraub and said, I think I have an idea how we can make this work. And he films that opening sequence. Also, Fred told me that Bruce was so concerned and worried about doing this movie that he got a facial tic. And he wasn't able to start the film for like 2 to 3 weeks. They were filming all these other scenes because Bruce was so wired and so afraid of screwing it up, of screwing the pooch. But finally he calmed down and he got into it, thanks to Linda, his wife, and other people on the set. Shiken, of course, the reason they cast Shiken as the villain is that Shiken is most famous villain in Hong Kong cinema because he was the villain in all these early Wong Fei-hung movies. And he became identified as that villain. So even though, Westerners again are going, why is Bruce beating up this old man? This old man is no challenge to Bruce Lee, but it was because they were catering again for the Hong Kong audience. And the same reason why they put in Angela Mao as his sister. She's wasted in the film, but she plays the victim, and of course she is great, and Bruce is great, and have the energy, and the reason this movie works so well is because Bruce Lee is in it. Because it's so bad, the movie, he looks even greater. Because there's nothing that even compares to him in this film. And you know how Jim Kelly got the job. Jim Kelly was not supposed to be in this film. Jim Kelly wasn't in this film until the night before they were supposed to leave for Hong Kong. And the person that they cast, which I believe was a gentleman named Rodney Tarkington, it's in my book, it's in all my books. Yeah, Rodney Tarkington. He was cast, but he felt that he was being used. He felt that, you're not paying me enough. And Fred Weintraub just sort of went, man, come on. Rodney thought he had Fred Weintraub over a barrel and that he'd have to pay him more. And unfortunately, wrong guy to mess with. Fred Weintraub went out with Robert Klaus, and they went to every dojo, not Kung Fu school. They didn't know anything about Kung Fu schools. But then again, the only real Kung Fu school in America was the one by Bruce Lee and the ones in Chinatown. So they had to go to dojos. And they saw this gentleman named Jim Kelly, and they went, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Here's some money. You want to come with us to Hong Kong? Off we went. It wasn't until the end of the movie that Jim Kelly said, Yeah, you were using me like I was some sort of Rodney Tarkenton. But in any case. So that's how Jim Kelly got the job. Now, you know the Jackie Chan story. Jackie, of course, had worked on Fist of Fury. He was a stuntman for Bruce. And so they brought him. So in the Hong Kong sequences, they brought Jackie back. And at the end of the sequence, at the end of the day, Jackie goes over to Bruce. All the other stunt guys are all going, oh, I could take Bruce, or oh, I admire Bruce, or Bruce is amazing, or I hate Bruce. But Jackie went up to him at the end of the day and go, me and a bunch of the stunt guys are going out bowling tonight. You want to come? And Bruce went, we'll see. And when Jackie left, again, all the stunt guys would go, oh, you talked to Bruce. You talked to Bruce. You actually talked to Bruce. And so they go bowling. And Bruce isn't there. And they're bowling and they're bowling and they're bowling. And Jackie is up there about to bowl the ball. And all of his friends around just stop talking. And Jackie turns around and they're all staring at the door. Because there's Bruce. Bruce has come to bowl. And Bruce comes over. He doesn't have bowling shoes. He doesn't have a bowling ball. He just sits down. And he watches Jackie bowl. And Jackie, he does the 10 frames. I seem to remember Jackie said, he told me this story in his secret warehouse in Hong Kong. And they never, while I was working on High Binders, which was then became the Medallion, and they never gave me a copy of the interview. But it's one of the best interviews. And I believe Jackie, that I've had with Jackie, and I've had a lot of interviews with Jackie. And I believe Jackie said that Bruce came over, thanked him for the invitation, and then just left without talking to anybody else. And it was one of those moments where all the stuntmen, there's a moment of total silence. And then all the stuntmen go crazy. And they're shaking Jackie, and they're shaking his hand, and they're hugging, oh my God, you're friends with Bruce Lee. So that was cool. Then, yin yang, we get the Sammo story. You know the Sammo story. Sammo, of course, is very good friend. You know, there are two great Sammo stories that Sammo told me about Bruce. One thrilling, and stop me if you've heard this one. Sammo is the big guy at Golden Harvest. He's the head honcho. He's top of the mountain. And he's working, I think, in Thailand or the Philippines or Taiwan, I'm not sure where. And he's hearing these stories. Bruce Lee's come to Golden Harvest. Man, he's amazing. And Sammo's going, oh, are you kidding me? I'm the top dog. And so when Sammo gets back to Hong Kong, he goes right for Golden Harvest. And he's going, where's Bruce Lee? Where's Bruce Lee? And Golden Harvest is on the side of a mountain, and the main building has all these long, thin, windowless hallways. They're like a labyrinth. And Sammo comes into one hall, turns the corner. By total happenstance, according to Sammo, Bruce comes around the other corner, and they wind up facing each other at the end of this long hallway. And they go, and are you Bruce Lee? And he goes, are you Sammo Hung? He goes, yeah. And Bruce goes, want to fight? And Sammo goes, yeah. And they come up like gunfighters, and they face each other, and they're getting ready, kind of like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, and Bruce stops preparing, lowers his hands, and goes, are you ready? And Sammo falls for it. Man, he falls for it. He lowers his fists and leans in and goes, yeah! This is Sammo telling me this story. The next thing he remembers, he is on his back, looking up, and Bruce is leaning over him and goes, how was that? And Sammo, immediate response, great! He puts up his thumb and goes, great! And Bruce takes his hand, helps him up. And they were friends ever since until
Right.
Until the scene. Bruce is making the scene, the opening sequence once the movie had wrapped. They're making the opening sequence. He needs somebody to fight. He calls Sammo. Sammo's again in a foreign country, Thailand or Philippines or whatever. But being that it's Bruce, Sammo gets on the next flight, comes, meets Bruce, does the entire scene. But Sammo was telling me this story, and he says, I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about Bruce that had changed. And it wasn't until Bruce drives, they finished the sequence. From the sequence, Bruce drives Sammo back to the airport. So at that point, they're made. I mean, BFFs forever. And then Bruce, at the gate, reaches into his pocket, pulls out some Hong Kong dollars, and hands them to Sammo. Now, maybe Fred Weintraub and Robert Klaus and other people don't understand the difference between Chinese and Japanese, or don't understand Chinese culture at all. But Frank, Alex, you know what that was, right? I mean, that was one of the biggest slaps to Sammo's face. The whole thing about Chinese face. You got to show respect. That was like the most disrespectful thing that Bruce could have done. I mean, it might as well have been a slap. You might as well have thrown the money at him. Because Sammo goes, basically the Chinese version of, what the fuck? I did this as a favor. And if Bruce had respected that, they would be friends to this day. The end of the story was that Sammo told me the story of when somebody comes up to him in one of his clubs and tells him that Bruce Lee had died. And Sammo just looks at the guy and goes, okay, Bruce Lee died, Greg. And that was it. That was...
But a little bit later, though, Rick, when he did Enter the Fat Dragon, was he kind of more at peace?
No.
But no? Because I thought that was like an homage, wasn't it?
Death too. He also did Dame of Death too, which is why that's why I instituted the concept of the Fanghouls. He was almost literally dancing on Bruce's grave.
So Enter the Fat Dragon is not an homage? It's
well, it'll be seen as a homage.
Okay.
But Sammo was making money off of it.
Oh, okay.
And so, yes, it was an homage. It was a tribute to the friends they had been. But Bruce is gone. Sammo's still here.
Right.
I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to have fun with you. And I'm also going to take advantage of Game of Death because everybody's dancing on your grave. Everybody's treating you like shit now. Everybody's copying you. So I'm going to as well. Another nice thing is, you know who that kid was. Frank, you know who the kid was.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell them who. He became one of the best latter-day martial art
choreographer, actor. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. If you want to see good kung fu following Jackie, I call him Stephen Tong Wai, of course, because that's the Western name. That's who that kid was. And he just grew up to be a great choreographer who I really admire. Stephen Tong Wai, these are, Yun Wai, all these guys. So I think that's it for my stories. Unless you have any questions.
So let's go on to something fun here. How was it meeting these two legends?
Oh.
Jim Kelly. I still think you can see the interview. I think the interview is still on YouTube. I did it at the Albuquerque Comic Expo, ACE. And it was awesome because I got there and they said, by the way, I get off the plane, I go to my table and I go, you're interviewing Jim Kelly. And I went, okay, great. And they filmed the interview. I believe if you ACE or Albuquerque Comic Expo Jim Kelly interview, you can see the interview. And I was very happy with the interview. Jim seemed very happy with the interview. I gave him signed copies of my books, and we sat opposite each other in the dealer's room. And when I ran out of Purell, he gave me his bottle of Purell, which I kept. I still have it somewhere. I just thought it was great. And again, I never heard it from him. But I was supposed to interview him again at an event, I think, in New Jersey. And I was told by the organizer, not by Jim, that Jim didn't want me to. And I figured, okay, because I'd already interviewed him once, wanted to give somebody else a chance. But later on, I heard that he said that I didn't make the interview enough about him.
He said that, or somebody in his crew said
Somebody
that?
said he said that.
All right.
So
It
again,
sounds like
I'm
someone in
not
his
going
crew
to-
probably said that.
I'm not going to. I'm not.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful time with Jim. Jim treated
Yeah.
me. I thought I treated him. You watched the interview.
Mhm.
You can tell I do talk a lot. But I believe I showed him as much face as I guess I could. But you guys decide. But yeah, that's Jim. There's with the great Angela Mao. Angela,
She's awesome.
they're all awesome. I mean, I've got to meet them, and I also understood because of all the years I spent, or the months I spent in Hong Kong, that the Hong Kong and the Chinese react to me very cautiously because I'm Mo Guai I'm hairy foreign devil, and also I love these things, which surprises them because they don't love them as much as I love these movies. And so the first time I met Angela, she was very prim. I met her. Was I with you, Alex? And with you, Frank? It was at the New York Asian Film Festival. That was the first time I met Angela Mao. And she was very reserved.
You mean 2010?
I don't know.
2010? Because she was the Lifetime Achievement Award recipient.
Yeah.
I was the interpreter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
cool.
we were off in the party, and she was very reserved. But then the next time she saw me, just like so many of these actors, like the guy in Kung Fu Hustle, they were like, we had been friends forever. Her face lit up, and everybody, Samo did that too, because once they understand that I know what they do, and I know the difference between Chinese and Japanese, and I know the difference between Kung Fu and martial arts, and all the rest of it, then they sort of like relax. They say, all right, Mo Guai, at least Mo Guai understands what we do. So, anyway.
All right. Eric.
Yes. Similar to some of these other Bruce Lee films, I tend to enjoy the non-action stuff more when I rewatch them lately. Like the beginning, that I as like, an American dude, I get a little mini lesson with Bruce at the beginning when he's talking to his student. It's interesting. You know what I mean? He goes to the kid and he's like, hey, listen. The kid's kind of lackadaisical with his first kick. He's like, come on, we need some emotional content here. Then the kid gets too mad and overdoes it. He's like, no, come on. You know what I mean? And then he bows and he doesn't keep his eye on him. He smacks him. It's like it's a nice little scene. I like that. And I do like the side actors in this. A big John Saxon fan. What was The Girl Who Knew Too Much, Tenebra, Nightmare on Elm Street. So, and I like some of his interaction with Bruce too, even at the party. Kind of a filler scene, but they're at this party and, Bruce is eyeing Saxon up. He's watching him. And Saxon comes over and he talks to him. And Bruce is like, he's insinuating that he's not partaking in all the festivities. And he knows Saxon's like, paying attention to his surroundings and trying to figure out if what does Saxon say? He's like, they're fatting us up for the slaughter or something like that. So I like that type of stuff. It's neat. And, there's a lot of like little things that I like that near the end when Bruce does the infiltration into the base and he takes the snake and he puts it in the office and he's just sitting there like bored while the guys are like running out of the office like terrified. There's some good stuff. The one thing I would say though is as a tournament film, right? Because a lot of people say that this is a tournament film, but we get a small handful of tournament fights and the tournament obviously never culminates to an actual winner. Because the film is more focused on doing other stuff. So I think people need to understand that. Because I have seen some people complain about that. Like, oh, like the tournament, they only get a few fights. But it's like, well, they focus on some other stuff that's entertaining. And I would say the ending, like the final villain, if that scene ended before the glass room, I'd say, yeah, it was disappointing. But once they get into that room, I think it takes it to the next level. And it makes it definitely a satisfying finale. Satisfying final fight, and we've seen it mimicked multiple times over the years as well. So and it's good to use that scene at the end of the film. You have a good solid finale at the end. So, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about this from my perspective, but I very much enjoy it, but I'm still not sure. I don't know which one I'm going to pick tonight. It's kind of a hard choice, so we'll see.
Right? This is interesting. All right. Alex, before you talk, my friend, I got a question.
Yes.
I always heard that this kick was real because Bob Wall pissed Bruce Lee off, and he actually cut him with he cut him with the broken bottle.
Yeah.
And Bruce was pissed. So I was like, well, you would know if this is. I wanted to double confirm that this is real.
So that's one of those things that is like the big Hollywood legend, and there are a couple people who dispute that. There's some people who say because Bob Wall had accidentally cut Bruce with the bottle in the previous scene.
Yeah.
And so the story was Bruce was kind of pissed and wanted to kind of give him a real kick. And that is the urban legend. That's what most people tend to believe.
Okay.
But I've heard other people say, no, that's not true. That didn't really happen that way. That was just made up or whatever. So it's a bit inconclusive, I suppose.
Okay.
Not according to Bob Wall.
Oh.
Did Bob Wall say it was legit?
No, he said, what he said was, Bob Wall was, again, he signed this to me. He said, wait. And he went through his pictures at the Comic-Con, and he picked this one out. He said, this was our relationship. The expression we have, the fun we're having with each other. What he said happened was, Bob accidentally did cut him, and he felt terrible about it. So when that scene came up, he said, let me have it. Let me have it.
Oh, all right.
Right.
And after he did the kick, this was like immediately after the kick. Because
wow.
Bruce, again, respected him so much for taking the kick. And he came back and basically he didn't do the exact same thing Samuel did, but he did the equivalent of, good job. And Bruce came back and said, yeah, you too, man. That's what Bob said.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
Also, a little trivia. You know that backward flip and kick in the film?
Yeah.
That was done by Yuen Wah. That was not done by Bruce Lee, but Yuen Wah did that kick.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, it doesn't. Now, I've already been seeing things. It's a quick shot. Is there a quick shot of Yuen Wah at the party?
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw. Okay.
Yeah,
He catches the first or second apple. Yeah.
Everybody has a
yeah,
quick shot. Yuen Bill, Lam Ching Ying.
Yeah.
You name it. They're all in there.
This is Lam Ching Ying right here
Yeah,
going through the
Lam
glass,
Ching
right?
that's Lam Ching Ying. Yeah. Right here.
That's great. Right there. Boom. That's great. And, you got the great Bolo Young here. He's got a cramp in his leg. He's trying to get rid of that cramp. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Alex, go for it, my friend.
Yeah, so this movie means a lot to me because this was my introduction to Bruce Lee. So I started martial arts with karate because I saw the Karate Kid and a bully knocked out my tooth and I wanted to learn martial arts to defend myself. And then I was homesick one day from school. I don't know, I had something. And my dad rented, and God bless, my dad is German. So Germans, like, the movie has nudity. Who cares? I am German. My son can watch it.
Bravo, my hair.
So I'm 8 years old, and my dad brings this movie. He's like, you're into martial arts. I think you might like this movie. He puts in Enter the Dragon. My mind is blown because this Bruce Lee guy is unbelievable. And there are boobs in the movie, too, which we don't want to talk about. So as an 8-year-old, I'm just like, oh, my God, this movie was created for me right now. This is going to be my life. So I essentially became a total Bruce Lee fanatic based on watching this movie. And I started buying all the magazines, reading everything about him. And then one day I was at the mall in Middletown, New Jersey at B. Dalton Bookstore. And I saw a book from Bruce Lee to the Ninjas martial art movies by this guy named Richard Myers.
Who's that? Who's that guy?
And I saw this book and I was like, and it had on the cover a picture from Enter the Dragon. And I was like, Mom, the book. Yeah. Because I didn't have any money. I pulled the book down. That's the book right there. I have it right over here on my shelf, signed by Rick Myers.
Das ist der Buch.
And it was like, it was a little bit more than my mom wanted to spend because it's like a hardcover. And I'm like, no, mom, look, Bruce Lee's on the cover, mom. And then I begged her to buy me the book. And then oddly enough, for my next birthday, my cousin, who didn't know I had the book, bought me another one, and I had two of them. I had like the hardcover and the softcover one. So anyway, I start devouring this book and finding all about Bruce Lee and about the other films and the other Kung Fu movies. So if it were not for Enter the Dragon and not for Rick Meyer's book, I literally would not be a professional Wing Chun instructor who just talks about Kung Fu on YouTube and teaches people this awesome martial art. Like literally my entire life changed because of this movie and Rick Myers. So like that is why that is like my whole trajectory right there, right? So for me to be like, if you told me when I was a kid that that something like the internet would exist and I'd be here talking about Kung Fu movies with that guy who wrote that book, I'd be like, you're crazy. So this is like, for me, this is such a huge thing anyway. So I just needed to put that out there because this movie has a very, like Bruce Lee said in his interview, martial art has a very deep meaning. Like this movie has a very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, right? And so that is like my whole trajectory right there. So I love this movie because it has that primacy effect of being the first one that I saw. So it's the first one. It's always kind of going to be that for me. Obviously, as I started to see more of his films and really like Way of the Dragon, I could put it in its place among his movies, but it always has that special place in my heart. And having gone to Hong Kong many times, like Frank talked about, I went to all the different places where they shot it, the different locations, Tingsan Monastery, and you know, the even just looked at the place which was the exterior shot for Han's Castle, which is not at all where they shot it, and like Frank said, like one scene, it's like 3 different places where they shot. It's not even, nothing is like really cohesive in that movie. And now as an older Hong Kong film fan, it's how many times can you spot Lam Ching Ying playing a different role, getting beat up in a different scene? When can you see Yin View? And whenever Sek Kin took a fall in that final fight scene, it was always Lam Ching Ying who did those falls, and obviously all the acrobats for Bruce Lee was done by Yuen Wah. I met one of the stuntmen who worked on this movie. He was one of the Chinese stuntmen, Zheng Wing Han in Hong Kong. He did a lot of Golden Harvest stunts, Police Story, stuff like that. He was one of the yellow suited extras in this movie. And of course, as a huge Bruce Lee fan, and you know, when I met him 2 years ago in Hong Kong, I had yum cha with him, and I was like, you know, asking him the typical question: well, is there anything about Bruce Lee that maybe people don't really know that you learned from him from being on this film? And he said, Bruce Lee, unlike many of the other people that he's worked with, including some very big names, he really cared about the stuntmen on the set, and that was very rare for the main actor to do. And certainly the producers and stuff didn't give a crap. He would eat his lunch with the stuntmen. He would make sure that they didn't just, like, if he had better food, he would want them to have that food. And he said, Bruce Lee cared about us so much, and I will never ever forget that, because that was the last time a main star really ever treated us like that. And to say that is really, really incredible. And so that's kind of one of those things that I always remember. Also, the stuntmen were pretty salty on the set for one reason, had nothing to do with Bruce Lee. The women who played the prostitutes were actual prostitutes, because they could not find Chinese actresses who would really want, like, they couldn't find that many who would actually play prostitutes. Right. So they had to go into presumably Wan Chai or whatever other red light district in Hong Kong at that time and hire actual prostitutes to play those roles. And they had to essentially pay them their hourly rate, but for the whole day, for all the hours they worked. So they got paid so much more money than the stuntmen, who just got like a very low per diem. And the stuntmen were really salty about that. So Bruce, being very kind to them, you know, ameliorated the situation a little bit, I suppose. And so I always found those kind of bits funny. And of course, the fact that Sek Kin was the villain, obviously he wasn't the most physical when you compare it to Bruce's other films, but there was something that, you know, as Rick said, Sek Kin was the classic villain from all the old Guan Dak Heng, Wong Fei Hung serials. And oddly enough, Bruce, when he grew up, would have watched Sek Kin in those movies. So he was somebody, like, you know, that he grew up watching, and then there he is with, you know, him starring in a movie and stuff.
So could you say that was kind of a passing of the torch?
Yeah, absolutely. Although one thing you have to realize, which is so crazy bizarre about that story, passing of the torch, yes, to Bruce, the new generation, only to realize Bruce would die within 4 months of filming those fight scenes with Sekin in 1973. And Sekin lived until 2009.
Yep.
Man.
And you think like he was kind of old and aged back then, and
Wow.
he lived until recent memory, and Bruce was the one that died only a few months later. So it's a bit bittersweet because it really should have been that passing of the torch, but it ended up not being. And so that I always feel like Bruce, the only cut of this movie that Bruce Lee saw was without the music. He saw a cut of it without Lalo Schifrin's amazing soundtrack, which like you cannot even imagine Enter the Dragon without that iconic soundtrack. And so Bruce saw an early cut of it without the music, so he never actually saw the film the way we all really know and love it. So that adds a little bit more to the bittersweet aspect to this film and what it could have been for Bruce Lee in his career. So anyway, it has that primacy effect. I really love it. And yeah,
I had to click on that comment there.
Quentin Tarantino definitely doesn't know what he's talking about. It's one thing to say he wants to make Bruce Lee some kind of asshole in his movie. That's fine. But it's another thing for him to now pretend that somehow was historical fact. That's where I have a really, really big issue. So, but anyway, that's probably don't even get me started. That's all I'm going to say about that. Right? I'll go ahead and pass that on.
Nice. All right, Kyle.
Man, how do I follow up after everyone? Jeez. But definitely, I remember watching this just recently and taking it all in. And again, like as Sifu Alex put it, this film really, really shines on. And especially when Eric said that when Bruce is teaching Lao like emotional content, I actually take that specific terms and put it into my own films, because a lot of when I was trying to be starting off as a filmmaker and seeing like all the YouTube action choreography and everything else, I just realized that a lot of it back then when YouTube was starting out was all just two guys fighting. And I was like, what did Bruce Lee say? Emotional content? Oh yeah, where is that? And I would look at these fight scenes, and then when I wanted to do fight scenes on my own stuff, it was like, okay, what really needs to be here? Story and characters. Okay, why are these two fighting? What's the reason for it? Are they going to learn from anything? And even though I went on my own journey on that, it was just more or less like I had to learn from that. And this film actually helps that type of filmmaking where you have to understand the emotional content that goes into fight scenes, especially how Hong Kong, Japan, every Asian country understands how martial arts works to a certain degree of certain Asian countries of how martial arts works in certain ways of just still upping the ante of how the action has to be. But on that, like that's what was missing in a lot of action films in certain countries. Still is. I didn't want to say it right away. Thank you, Rick. But other than that, like when I really looked at this film, I really found out like when you really watch it, Bruce Lee's character does not like want any involvement with this mission until his old family friend says, yeah, by the way, your sister and I were shopping through town, and then we go to Angela Mao's character, and there gives him a reason to go to the island, which is finding Bob Wall, even though, yes, he has to go against Shekin's character because of the whole Shaolin Temple debacle that Shekin did. It was more or less like he's just doing that for Braithwaite, but personally, he finds Bob Wall's O'Hara just like, oh, you're going to be there? Okay. There's going to be some emotion behind that fight, and even though, yes, it's one-sided, but you see like Bruce Lee gaining the upper hand on Bob Wall's character, even up to that emotional moment where he crushes his chest in. And I still love that scene of that just emotion of him, like knowing like, okay, I avenged my sister, but at the same time, like, damn, no one can copy that emotion right there.
Hardcore.
That subtlety. And certain moments of like you get the sense of John Saxon being this compulsive gambler and in debt, and then Jim Kelly Jim Kelly like being this former vet and then experiencing racism and where he is, and then fleeing, and then being chosen to go into this tournament. Both of them going to be chosen to this tournament, which is still not mentioned at all in this film, like how certain films are. But and like you said, Eric, like this is a tournament film, but no one mentions a tournament at all. It was just like, what? There's a tournament? All right, and even to the point where Han's main lady, Anna Caffrey, just starts saying, "Okay, a gift." And she goes to Jim Kelly, and I know definitely probably Rush Hour 2 reference. He's like, "I'll take you. I'll take you." He just picks them out, and of course that won't fly today at all. Like he just starts picking out women, and then John Saxon is like, "I already chosen the woman I want," but at least for Bruce Lee's character, it's story driven for him, where he's like, "The one who threw this dart, I want to talk to her because that's who Braithwaite said was their agent," and she even says the urgency of it. And then even to the point where Bolo Young is so underutilized in this film at all. He's like just standing there, and Bruce Lee's ready to fight him, and yet John Saxon's got it. I'm like, really?
That's a negative. Yeah, that's a nitpick. I was like, boo.
Right? To see Bruce Lee fight with Bolo Young would have been great. Seeing him fight with Sammo Hung at the beginning, as much as Rick told the story, like, yes, they gave us a good moment that we got a Bruce Lee versus Sammo Hung. Sad that what happened after is kind of sour now, bittersweet. Even to the point where this was like the kind of thing that I did totally caught this week, or when I watched it, was when Bruce Lee's like down, like in the tunnels fighting everyone, and then finally gets captured to the point where Roper has to re-educate him. He was only wearing his one piece, and then now, as you look at it, he has a wrap around his pants, around his waist. I was like, when did they give him time to change in his captivity? Like, to just be proper. I was like that. And then my other friend, my same friend, he just like told me one day, "Hey, do you realize in the fight there's like that one guy that's not a stunt guy in the whole scuffle when Han's calling everyone out? This one guy in the scuffle that's not a fighter is close to Bruce Lee, and he's just approaching, and then he's just like, no, it's literally like no. It's literally in the film. I was like, oh my god, it's like that. It's like that. I don't know why my friend actually looks at all these extras, like the one extra in $1 Million Baby, that is so over the top, going like, "Woo!" and then wait for a high five, and then does it.
Han's got a memory, man. Memorizing all his henchmen's names. That's impressive.
Oh yeah, can I say something about that? Because Sekin couldn't speak any English. He was dubbed by Ki Luke, who's Master Po from the Kung Fu series, right? Yes. And basically, he had someone mouthing the lines off camera, and then he would just imitate it in English, which is why it kind of looks like he's saying it, but not really. Yeah. But when he starts rattling off all the names for them to go and attack Bruce Lee, you hear Ki Luke's Cantonese has kind of a thick American accent, actually. So he's like, "Adi da koi," like you hear it. It's like, if I spoke Cantonese like that, my wife would yell at me, right? But he had like a very like American Cantonese accent, which was kind of interesting. There's also another famous flub in Enter the Dragon when everyone is fighting in the courtyard and Bruce starts fighting Han. They have one wide shot which pans out. And Bruce has already started fighting Han at this point, and you have this wide shot. And if you look, you have the sea of the guys in the black uniforms and in the red uniforms, and you see Bruce without his shirt and Han like leaning on a pole like this, and Bruce is directing extras where to go, and you can see it in the wide shot. And once you see this, you can never unsee that scene ever again. Right?
La 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 la. I'm kidding.
We could appreciate this movie for what it is. We could agree. I could say, like, if it was like a Bond film, it would have been Roper, but adding Bruce Lee to it added merit to it to be like in his own way of like his own film to return to to the U.S., but it's sad that he never got to see it and see it in its
Yeah.
full completion. And it, like
Yeah.
that's all I gotta say about this.
And we got we got a chance to see Bolo take care of his sciatica.
Oh yeah, like him just crushing people too. Just
What
You know
the
what
one?
Bolo specializes in?
body weight or body training, I believe.
Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, yes.
That's right. That's right. The one crush where he had the guy like this. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
How does that work when he's like he's cuddling the
doesn't.
guy?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Oh man.
Or production ignorance.
I like the scene on the boat when the guy goes, "What's your style?"
Yeah.
My style. You can call it the art of fighting without fighting. The art of fighting without fighting? Show me some of it. You gotta love that. You gotta love that.
Oh yeah,
acting.
best New Zealand accent ever. Which turns out to be Australian. Another form of production ignorance.
But yeah, that was great. Well said, Kyle. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Vote, 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 vote. All right, Frank, what you got? Who you got?
That was a tough one. This is a tough one. I agree with I think was it Kyle or Alex who said. I think it was Rick who said it or Kyle said it. Way of the Dragon was 95% Bruce Lee. That's absolutely true. Yeah, Rick said it, right? Okay, yeah.
99.9, yeah.
Right. So 9.9.9. So, I think, that alone would have had me, vote for the film. However, I just cannot ignore how iconic Enter the Dragon was. What a classic it was and how influential it was. So I have to go with Enter the Dragon.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, man, it's a little difficult, but I'm gonna go with Enter the Dragon. I just think overall the entertainment value is just a notch above.
That's it. You can vote for any reason. That's what Versus is all about. Alex.
Also,
Once upon a time in Hollywood. That's your vote.
Get me started.
Go ahead.
Very difficult choice for me because of what Enter the Dragon means for me. It's like a 49-51 for me. Return of the Dragon. Oh, sorry, Way of the Dragon.
It's like, whoa, I was confused there. I think, wait, what are we doing?
Way of the Dragon.
What's your style?
My
All
style.
right.
You mean the nudity didn't sway you over?
There was nudity in Way of the Dragon.
That's true.
That's true, yeah.
Uncut. All right.
That's true.
That's true.
There were some bloops in there. All right, we got one for Way. Kyle.
Oh man, this is a hard one. Like I had this discussion before, and it was like Enter the Dragon has all these notable moments, like memorable moments, whereas Way of the Dragon is 100% all Bruce Lee's philosophy and everything else. It's him, and oh god. But if I had to choose,
Do it.
I would have to go with Enter the Dragon because it has, again, emotional content and the side fact that it still impacts my filmmaking today.
Copy that. Rick?
Well, if Bruce Lee had been in 100% of Enter the Dragon, I would have voted for Enter the Dragon, but he's not. He's off screen. And as somebody pointed out, when he's off screen, the movie dies. The movie curls up into a little ball and dies. And yes, it had a great influence to Americans, but I'm an international type of guy. We're English speaker. So,
I'm also Canadian, by the way.
yeah, that's right. Or Canadian or English speaker. I saw these movies in order because I saw Big Boss, Fist of Fury, and I think Return of the Dragon before I saw Enter the Dragon. And I was, having grown up with serials and comic book movies and TVs, I was not impressed. I was said, Bruce, you're awesome, but you're not in every frame of this movie. You're in every frame of Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon.
All right. All right, here we go. It's Samurai's turn.
I know it won't win, but that's okay.
Everyone's brought up some really good points. Really, really, really good points, man. And this was difficult. Rick's on a roll, torturing us every week in a good way, though. It's fun.
Next week too.
Yeah. But I gotta go with my gut, and I gotta go with the little samurai who was sitting in his living room next to his dad eating cereal and watching a live action superhero on screen do his thing. Gotta go, Enter the Dragon.
What's the public vote?
Yeah.
It's bad. I'm
2%.
I'm not. Here we go. You ready? The internet voting poll.
Well, that's more than I thought Way of the Dragon would get.
Yeah.
Freaking Westerners.
Friggin' English speakers listening to the dubbed version.
I redeemed myself.
You redeemed yourself. This guy.
I want to
Again,
one thing real quick. Go ahead, Rick.
one of those choices where you can't do wrong. Whichever one you choose is great.
Yeah.
No sweat.
And it could be for any reason. It could be you could vote because you're doing a critical thing, or be like, hey, this one had bigger bloops than the other one, so I'm going with Team Big Bloops. All right.
Oh, I just want to point out one thing real quick.
Oh, go ahead, Frank.
So I just want to say, like, my first Bruce Lee film was Fists of Fury, and I saw it in Hong Kong in 1980. What happened was when they first showed it in the early 70s, they cut out that scene where he kicked that sign, Chinese and dogs not allowed, because they felt that scene was too offensive. And then so they re-released Fist of Fury in Hong Kong theater in 1980 with that scene put back in. So I went to see it at the Golden Harvest Theater on Jordan Road. And when that scene came up, and then when Bruce, jump up and kick that sign off, the whole theater erupted into cheers and applause. That was one of the best, most memorable, movie-going experience of my life.
And Fist of Fury is still my favorite Bruce Lee movie out of all of them.
And by the way, it's extremely rare for a Hong Kong audience to do that.
Exactly.
The time I heard them do that was A Better Tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
But
Tonight was fun. Make sure you guys follow. All the Badasses info is in the description box below. Subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. That's right. He will be on the Kung Fu Extravaganza. There's no getting out of it now. He has been chosen. Rick has chosen you. You can't get out of it now, Alex.
Vincent and Frank, come on, man.
Yeah. And like I said, everyone's info is in the description box. Subscribe to all these badasses. Follow them. And I'd like to thank all you badasses for watching tonight. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That's right. Join the Movie Dojo Army. That's right. It is growing. That's right. Don't forget, July 22nd, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, Kung Fu Extravaganza. Spread the word. That's right. And tomorrow it's going to be really early for me. I know, but it's fun doing it. It's going to be early, at least for me over here. But we have, that's right, Zach Lee, White Boy Bobby from The Night Comes for Us, son. Oh, yeah. Headshot, Night Comes for Us, Buffalo Boys. The badass Zach Lee, White Boy Bobby himself, will be hanging out with Samurai tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning. Yeah.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
it's only 5 a.m. on the West Coast.
He's in Indonesia, man. That's how we had to make it happen. But yeah, he wants to hang out, and we're going to have fun tomorrow morning, so make sure you guys join. And this was a lot of fun, and we'll see all you guys next time. Take care. Keep watching movies. That's right. Take care, guys.